And let's move on to the last presentation for this session, which is From Poetry to Song, a corpus-based approach to textual variation. And it's going to be presented by Pablo Ruiz.
No, it's actually Helena Bermúdez online.
Okay, it's an online presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Let me see if I can share my screen. Yes.
Yes.
I think maybe we could mute the room because I can hear echo.
Echo.
Thank you. So the work I am presenting today is done in collaboration with Clara Martínez, who is also online, and Pablo Ruiz, who is actually in the room. And we are going to present some preliminary results of a study that examines the textual variation that a poem suffers when it's converted into a song. We will begin by presenting the context of the project, then introduce very briefly our theoretical framework, present the different research questions that motivated this work, and we introduce briefly the state of the art so that then we can focus in the methodology and present these first exploratory results to end with a conclusion. So the framework of this study is the project Poemas, Poetry for More People, Poetry in Contemporary Spanish Popular Music. And the main goal of this project is to develop a database with lyrics that are written in Spanish from 1975 onwards and who have any type of relation with a previous poem. This is the main goal of the project, but it also has a large public dissemination goal, and there are many cool activities related to bringing poetry to more people, as the title of the project says. There are multiple ways in which two cultural objects can relate, like citation, parody, continuation, or what we are going to focus here today, which is the adaptation to a different medium, specifically how a written text goes to sound media with the addition of music. We are going to use the term musical adaptation as an umbrella term to include, as I mentioned before, any type of relation between a song and a previous poem. And there are multiple theoretical frameworks that we can use to study these musical adaptations. And but we have been heavily influenced by Gerard Genet and his concept of transtextuality, which was a broad concept to be able to typify and categorize all these relations between texts. And we are focusing on the lyrics themselves, so not that much on the music. So it makes sense to use a framework that was also based in textual comparison. And Genet has created a categorization with different type of transtextual relationships and different subcategories. And in our case, we are going to implement especially those related to intertextuality and hypertextuality. And here we can see the state of the database of Poemas in December 2021. So we have around 1,000 songs recorded. And these are the categories we use to describe the relationship of the song with the original poem. And as we can see, a specific type of what Jeanette calls transposition, serious transposition, which is the similar adaptation or identical, and the identical adaptation are 93% of our corpus. So these are the type of adaptations we definitely find more frequently. So having this in mind, the research questions that motivated this work was entailed the study of the textual variation itself, even when we are in front of examples that are very similar to the original song. It made sense for us to study what are the changes, even if they are small, that are made. Why are those changes being made? Are they structural? Are they related to the semantics? Does the style of the original poem change thanks to these changes? Are the changes motivated by the new medium? Is the fact that we are now in a song motivating the changes? If we have different adaptations of the same poem, do we find similar changes in those adaptations? And we also wanted to enter into a reflection, so not really find an answer to it, but about the authorship and what it entails when there might be these changes that are minor in some cases, but major in others. Do we have to reflect more deeply on what authorship entails in these cases? So very briefly, the adaptations of poems into songs have been studied from very thoroughly from different theoretical frameworks. The only two works we wanted to highlight here today, because we are implementing them as part of a theoretical framework, is this work by Dal Monte, who talks about expansion as the different ways in which and she tries to categorize the different ways in which music expands the sense of a poetic text, and she creates this categorization of phonological, grammatical, and semantic as the type of expansions, and we have implemented this categorization as well. And then the concept of intersemiotic translations will be called upon during the conclusions as well. So, to our knowledge, there are no other corpora, hybrid corpora like ours, where we have the poem and we have the different lyrics that have been created after that poem, and at least not in Spanish, so that's part of the originality of our work. And we began by selecting randomly a series of musical adaptations that were in the database under the category similar adaptation. So we saw before that it was the category that was more common, so we wanted to focus on why and how the small changes actually could be creating this new song, and what was the motivation behind them. We then did a comparison of each poem with the lyrics, and then we carry out a manual annotation to describe the type of changes. This is our description of the changes. We have 4 different features: the type of change, which relates to a classic classification of transposition, repetition, omission, addition, or substitution. We then describe the modified sequence, if it's a fragment, a verse line, or a word. Then the level of analysis, phonic, semantical, or structural, which is parallel to the classification that Dal Monte implemented when she was talking about the expansion, the type of expansion that music provides to the original poem. And then we record the relevance, if it's a major change or a minor one. So our work began by creating plain text files out of the TI encoded files where we have the songs and the poems with, of course, a lot of metadata. We then create a pairwise automatic comparison using collatex, which is a software usually used in textual scholarship. And more specifically, we implemented the Python library. And then we created the alignment tables with collatex. So the tables where we can see very easily what is the text that is in common, is common between the two versions, the poem and the lyrics and the song, and where are the differences. I insist that our comparison was pairwise. That means that each poem was compared to each one of the musical adaptations. If the same poem was adapted multiple times, we didn't consider that all the adaptations were witnesses of the same poem. We did it always, the comparison is always done in pairs, because that will allow us easily to describe the textual change in relation always to the original poem. Then we do this literary annotation using the alignment tables, and we created a data frame with all the annotations to then carry out a quantitative analysis. So our findings are that the repetition is the most frequent type of textual change. Here we see the distribution of all the points of variation in total. And then here we see the representation in the proportion of musical adaptations. So 80% of our songs present repetition. And concerning the constituent that is affected by the textual changes, a fragment is the most frequent one. And or the changes are also very common at the level of the word, and at the level of the line is a little less. And then concerning the analysis, the level of analysis in which this change takes place, we find that phonic is by difference the less common one, and sorry, and that structural is the most frequent. So in conclusion of what I just shown, the repetitions at a structural level are the most common changes, and they affect fragments. So what we have here is, in most cases, the repetition of a couple of lines to create a refrain or to create a chorus. So this is why it has a structural level, and this is without doubt the most frequent change that a poem suffers when going to the conversion, when it's converted to a song, and when it's analyzed in a similar adaptation and not major changes are created. When we try to look into other type of combinations, thanks to the categorization we have implemented, for instance, if we look into substitution of words with a semantic value, we also can find different patterns. For instance, it's quite recurrent to find that these changes are done to decrease a little bit the intensity of the original poem, like to make a lexical change that affects the strength of a word. We have here, for instance, an alignment table The first is the poem, the second is the lyrics of the song, and we see how the word disgust is replaced with hostility. We find other examples like moss does not stain, just covers, etc. So it was kind of recurrent, and we also have, in the other sense, changes that intensify the meaning. For instance, here we go from, it's just a small change in a verb, and we go from not feeling a heart to not having a heart. So here we will be with an intensification, but also there are other strategies to intensify that are quite common, like for instance, the addition of conjunctions to create this intensification. So we can see how the same results can be acquired with different techniques. And before going to the conclusions, I would like to mention a caveat of this work. We have here another alignment table with a poem and 3 different musical adaptations of the same poem. And as I mentioned before, in our work, we did pairwise alignments. So in our case, this will count as 3 different editions, even though what we have clearly here is a musical adaptation, the first one, and then we have adaptations of this musical adaptation. It's not 3 different musical adaptations of the same poem. We are under something different. So to conclude, usually identical adaptations are a sign of the preference for an imitative transmediality, that is, of transforming the work to a different artistic medium, in this case the song, but trying to imitate the original cultural object. And we wonder if the similar adaptations have the same goal, and our conclusion is that for the most part, yes, because we can see that most of the textual changes are intrinsically motivated by the new medium, and this is where repetition is so important. That's why it's the most frequent change. We can understand pop songs as formalistic songs in which repetition has a very specific role. And this is what happened in our case. We could see all these structural changes based on repetition to create the refrains and the choruses, and which in a way is the creation of the earworm effect that is so characteristic of the pop songs. And just to end, I mentioned before that we also wanted to interrogate a little bit about authorship, and we wonder about additions and substitutions and maybe even omissions and how they may affect the concept of authorship. And we have examples like this one in which there were 3 initial stanzas that were taken word by word from the original poem by Machado, and then we have 3 new stanzas that are obviously inspired by the original poem. They even have the repetition of 2 verses that work as a hook in these 3 new stanzas. But we do have to wonder if this new song has to be analyzed as an adaptation of a previous poem or something else, right? And as future work, we would like to reevaluate all the categories we have used in the database to establish the relationship between the poem and the songs. We want, and the different adaptations, we want also to reevaluate the categorizations we have implemented in this current study. For instance, we have changes at the level of word, and we have found that it might work better if we divide them into lexeme and morpheme, because that way we can make the difference between lexical changes, like a substitution of one word for the other, from the morphological ones, where we have seen certain tendencies to create plurals, for instance, and maybe add new features to our study and add, for instance, the motivation and try to categorize the motivation also behind these changes. We want to establish a classification that goes beyond the pairwise alignment, so that way we can also take into consideration all the musical adaptations of the same poem and try to do this type of analysis. We want to include more adaptations in our work and other types, not just the ones labeled as similar adaptations. And then we would like to attempt to do an automatic classification of the textual changes. And these are the references I have cited around, and just finish with a thank you. Sorry, I think I went a bit over time.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, we have time for a discussion. So are there any questions?
Hello, Helena. Thank you very much for your talk. Well, thank you, Pablo and Clara, as well, of course. My question is, have you thought of, or maybe you said so and I didn't get it, but have you thought of looking at what thematic aspects are being changed or kept, whether there's an overlap between certain topics or thematic aspects of the original poems that are being that come out as more salient, or are systematically kept or systematically changed?
Yes, so at the moment in the classification we were implementing, we didn't have this. We have a place to add comments and try to explain a little bit the rationale, but we haven't been systematic in that, and that's part of our future work, because as I mentioned in the substitutions that have a semantic value, we could see certain tendencies, like we could see quite a few examples of this intensification or decrease in intensification. So we think we can have some things to explore there. There is also, since we are with similar adaptations in principle, I think the goal is to try to be faithful a little bit to the original poem. So there might not be as much space or intention to do change in the semantics, but we will also, one of our research questions is to explore the if a song itself can be interpreted as a critical reading of the poem. So this is something that we want to explore systematically and not just going to cases. So we are trying to find a way to formalize these type of changes, so later we can extract them, retrieve them easily, and try to create some results a bit more conclusive than these explorative results I showed today. I think, I'm not sure if Clara can talk. Like, I think her micro is off. Maybe she wants to add something because she's online as well. Clara Martínez Cantón. No, I think she cannot talk. I think she's muted. No. Okay, no.
Okay, do we have any more questions? Actually, I would have one as well.
Yes.
In your database, how many different authors of poetry and how many different performers of the adaptations do you have?
Well, I don't have the data here. 1 second. I think I might have it. Sorry.
And whether you have a performance of whom you have many different adaptations of many poems, and if so, is there anything that can be said that is in common to them?
So we haven't do this type of comparisons yet, but we didn't have some performers that have made multiple adaptations of different poems by the same author, but also by different authors. I think in the slides I show 2 examples of Serrat, who is a very, very, very important performer and who actually influenced so much the Spanish music environment that many of the adaptations that we have recorded are not adaptations of the original poem, but adaptations of the performer, of Serrat. And so yes, we have cases of the same poem adapted multiple times by different performers, and we have cases of performers that have adapted different poems by same authors or different authors. And I am sorry, I cannot find the data right now.
Okay, well, thank you. That was the main question. Do we have any other questions? Okay, then thank you again for the presentation, and this concludes the first session. Let's have a coffee break.